Hey guys, I've just about edited a video. I've just realised it can be two parts. The first part is how, well, I can't show you, I've hidden it. That's the second part. How a winch solenoid works, and if you have a Kings winch solenoid, you watch this video and you will work out how to upgrade to an Albright solenoid and what wiring to put where. I definitely recommend that. I've repaired my Kings solenoid once and it worked for a few months. It went a few good pulls, but then it required a maintenance again. So I did that and it started working again, but I lost confidence in it. So I just bit the bullet and bought the biggest Albright winch solenoid that I could find. It was $200, but I think it's money well spent. So I'm going to break it up into two parts. Part one, how winch solenoid works and how to upgrade your Kings winch solenoid to an Albright winch solenoid. And then part two is if you have a 200 series Land Cruiser, you might want to hide your winch control box behind the grill. As you know, you've got your C and I up the front here, and a winch box sort of looks ugly and gets in the way. And I've got a specific bracket that I made up that you might be interested in to make the Albright solenoid fit there, or any solenoid really. Yeah, cool. Let's get into video number one, Kings solenoid replacement. G'day everyone. So I've been replicating my bull bar over the last few days on account of having not had enough to wrap the coat to finish the bull bar the first time I did it, when I initially put it on, maybe a year ago. A can is not enough for a bull bar. I got one of the bottles with hardener, the two-part mixers, and one of those was enough to put a decent coat on. For anyone wondering, but today's job is, while I've got the winch off, I have in my hot little hands an Albright DC182, can't read that well, 859 PL winch solenoid. It's a high output. It's good for a number of amps. Tony, put the number of amps it's good for in the screen when you edit this. Okay, that threw me on a curveball. I went looking at the specs of the Albright solenoid, and it gives you a duty cycle range of amps, and being an industry leader, the specs are pretty transparent. But I looked up all the other solenoids and they mention an amp rating, but not, they're pretty ambiguous about what that amp rating relates to. Now it's got, in the next picture you'll see the Albright's rated to more amps at lower duty cycles. So a duty cycle is how long the current runs through it as a percentage of time. So like, for example, a welder will have a 50% duty cycle a lot of the time, and that's to allow heat to get out of it, and that's what it's rated at. And it might be you know, on a 5-minute cycle, so it can run 2.5 minutes and then you need to give it a 2.5 minute rest. That's what duty cycle is. I don't really know how that relates to the winches, but it doesn't have a total time, it just has a duty cycle percentage. So I guess that would mean if you run it for a minute and then you can rest it for 3 minutes, that's a 25% duty cycle, so it can handle whatever the amps are in this next table at that. Now the Kings winch motor is 7.2 horsepower, which transfers across to about 5,250 watts. We know amps is power divided by volts, Ohm's law. So power is the 5,250 watts. It's going to run somewhere around 12 volts, and that comes up at about 430 amps. So probably have to have like a 10% duty cycle for this winch to handle those amps, if I read it correctly. Doesn't sound right. Now it's obviously going to pull that amp. It's going to be its peak load. So when the winch is all the way in and the leverage was working against it, and it's dragging its full rated load of 12,000 pounds. Why don't we bloody Australianise winches? Don't need pounds, don't mean anything. What's that? 12,000 pounds, roughly 6 ton. So I mean, that could be your 3-ton vehicle stuck on a rock. Sorry, wafflage, as Jim says. He's hilarious. Look up Superbike Surgery. But the Albright solenoid rates has a table that's fault current braking capacity. Now, my assumption is this is the current that the relay contacts can break or make at without getting welded together. Don't take that for granted. That's just my best guess based on stuff. So I'm going to assume when the Runva solenoid says it's rated to 600 amps, that it's rated to 600 amps under a fault load, where that means it won't basically weld the contacts together at anything beneath that. So the Albright webpage says the high output solenoids are good for double the current that their other solenoids are for. Whatever the case, looking at it, it's a buttload beefier than the one that comes on the Kings winch. So it does state on, I think, the Giggle-Pin webpage that the one I've got's made for high current competition winches, so it should do my Kings winch in a canter. Back to the doors. And it's to replace my Kings winch solenoid. It pains me to say, I've put a video up previously of filing the contacts on my Kings winch solenoid. I put it back together with silicone, so it was waterproof, and it failed again. And I have refiled the points. It's working fine. I filed them a little bit flat, so I don't know if that was bad. So this time I filed a dome shape in them for anyone wanting to give their Kings winch solenoid another go. But given we do take the 200 off-road a bit, and when I have had to use the winch, I've really had to use it, I figured I will go straight for the industry standard Albright. There's so many other name brands that your favourite influencer, they won't even call it a winch, they'll call it the bloody brand name, like the English people talking about their Hoover. And you know, several years ago they called it another brand, and I'm sure in time to come they'll call it another brand. So be careful when you're thinking about things to buy. Be careful of just how you're being influenced, because you know, I've seen it where things come out of the same factory, and people will argue that one's better than the other because, you know, influencers. Look, we like watching their content. They get paid to promote products. That's cool, I love that. I'd rather that than have no content to watch, but we do need to go in eyes wide open. Anyway, Albright's been the industry standard for the last few decades that I can remember. Pretty sure in the coal mine I did my apprenticeship in the mid-90s, they were using Albright solenoids on lifting equipment there. Could be talking out my arse, it's happened before. Okay, so winches are clever bits of engineering in that not the polarity swapping 2-wire winches, but these with the yellow, red and black and then a separate earth. They're pretty clever. What they do, when you pull your solenoid in, all you do is join this 12 volt from your battery, that's it, to one of the field wires, and then the other one comes back and loops across and does something and goes to ground somehow. But what you've got, there's 4 wires, because if that's one end of the wire and that's the other, and that's a magnetic coil, same on this side, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 terminals, so 4 wires. The winch solenoid's job is to keep the primary windings the same all the time, the same polarity, and the other one actually swaps over. So that's what your winch solenoid's doing. It's powering up these two the same all the time, forward or reverse, and forward or reverse just changes, you know, it's not the terminals obviously, but it changes the polarity, the way the electricity is running. So if we imagine this is positive, minus, red, ground, and then that'll always flow that way, and depending if we're winching in or out, the other, you know, I think they call it the field wiring, power run this way or this way. What it does is it creates a magnetic field, an electromagnetic field. This will be wrong, experts. I'm just putting it in rough terms to describe the idea, not exactly how it happens. But these we know magnetic fields north and south repel each other, and there's fixed magnets in the motor as well. Is there? Or does the field become the fixed magnet? Anyway, yes. Basically, when we run them one way, they're repelled in one direction, and when we swap these, if we swap them both, the repulsion would still be the same. So we swap one set over, and then the magnetic fields oppose each other in the other direction. So that's basically what your winch is doing, and it's run by these clever little relays where basically winch in. This is a ground, earth, neutral, minus. When we want to pull in one set of solenoids that send the field one way, we put power on this, and then when we want to go the opposite direction, we put power on this. And what this does is makes another electromagnetic field. And in here, in my other video, you would have seen there's the plungers that are affected by those magnetic fields. So when you pull one set in, it shuts relays in one direction to power the field in one way, and when you pull the other set of relays, it powers the field in the other way. So they're pretty clever. I do a lot of circuit design in my work, and even though it's only 4 wires, these still get a bit tricky. But if you can come back to that concept that one pair of wires are just to power the winch up the same direction all the time, and then the other are transferable, that'll get you there. So okay, so I've got a 200 series, as you know. I mounted my winch solenoid up here initially because before I bought this bull bar, I made a cradle here so that the winch could go on my factory alloy bull bar. Of course, I bent that and needed to replace the bull bar anyway. But when I did that, I didn't have room to put the control box on the winch. On the bull bar. It was, there was just no room. The channel was too small. Anyway, I quite like it back here, tucked out of the way. So I'm going to put the Albright here as well. But I don't know if you can tell from these pictures, the Albright's freaking huge. It's a fair bit bigger than the other one. So what I'm thinking, I've just got this one mounted to sheet aluminium L bracket for the radiator support. What I think I'll do, and what I think I'll make this video about, is getting some 25mm box tube, making it in a way that it fits in this channel, and then I can mount the bracket to that. Anyway, I'll get it apart and pick you up down the track. I'll keep looking at the wrong end of the phone. Now, I gave you a bum steer before about the windings on the winch. It's basically right, except rather than sending 2 circuits at once, for one direction we've got 12 volt from the battery. It'll go, when we pull, let's have a look, when we pull this relay in, 12 volts will go from the battery to yellow, which we'll call field 1, through the winding this way of the winch, into black, which is not engaged, so its contact will be across to this flat bar, which also goes across to red, through the armature, which I assume is the brushes into the internal bit, and the field must be the external bit, to negative on the battery. So in through the, let's call it the stator in this direction, out into the rotor, then to earth. Then when we pull this relay in, 12 volts will come in, this terminal will drop down onto this bottom plate, and it'll come this way through the field wiring, then through this upper plate, because this is not energized, so the contactor is up joining these two bars, then through. So in one direction we go 12 volts, yellow, back on black, out to the armature, and the other one we go 12 volts, out on black, in on yellow, out to the armature. So my OCD wanted this to be the 12 volt battery post, and I worked out how to make it, how to wire it up so it would be that. So never mind these bits, but this is the wiring for this relay. So that's common. This is your relay coil for 1, we'll call it, relay coil for 2. So negative, we'll put 12 volts on this one, it'll pull this contactor in, and that one stays up. So it'll pull this contactor in, and that one stays. Then when we want to reverse direction, we take power off that one, obviously, add power to this one, it'll pull this contactor up, join in, what is it, D and C, sorry, A and C, and then this one stays closed. So I reverse engineered it from the Kings wiring by mimicking this, basically saying when we pull in relay 1, we've got a circuit coming in, out on yellow, back on black, out on red. So 12 volts to yellow, black to red, and then the opposite when we drive the other way, 12 volts out on black, in on yellow, out to red, 12 volts to black to yellow to red. Then I compared it to this setup here, the Albright wiring, which when you pull in relay 1, power goes between A and B and then C to D. So I've just, 12 volt yellow, black, red. But because of the way this switches, if I want to make this the 12 volt positive, so that's terminal D, it's connected to the yellow and black wires when it's at rest. So when we're neither winching in nor out, it's not a problem because that's just going through, or maybe a problem. No, it's not grounding anywhere. So it doesn't, it'll just energize the coil, but there'll be no path to ground. It gets its path to ground through the armature. That's okay, but it means we've got our winch cable here, isolator, 12 volts in. It means we'll also have permanently, when we're not using the winch, 2 of these cables, 2 of the 3 cables to the winch will have 12 volts on them, and it just increases our chance of a fault current if one of these rubs through. So if we wire it up the way Albright say to, there's never any voltage downstream of the solenoid. So if we do rub one of these cables through, it'll only be a problem when we operate the winch and close the circuit. So I really wanted that to be from the battery and these 3 to be to the winch, just for my OCD's sake, but it's got to be, if we want to minimise the rub through fault current potential like I just explained, that's got to be your 12 volts into the battery, and then it doesn't go onto any of these terminals when the winch is not in operation, because this and this, A, B and C, sorry, D, that's D. B and C, so D, B and C are always connected when it's at rest. All right, I will, I'll drill some holes and cut some of this stuff up and work it up and come back to you. Oh, I've lost me paint pen, but basically that's 12, it's the opposite to this. We got 12 volt red, black, yellow. I'll do some static drawings up for these because I've had trouble myself finding all this information. I've found this out through operating the relay and using my multimeter to find out which wiring diagram or what the wiring circuit is. Thanks for watching, guys, on the YouTubes, on the off chance that it might be helpful to someone. Take care. That's what she said.